Is that the expectation in the Trump administration, is once we get GDP above 3 to 5% without rampant inflation, that we can pay down some of this?
Well, that's the prevailing thought. That's what everyone argues. That's why they can hold their nose and vote for some of this. But, at some point, even that theory, has its weaknesses. I mean, that is the proper perspective, and I believe that as part of my economic philosophy. But also know that if the other side of the ledger gets too deep in the red, that the whole theory breaks down. I mean, the model breaks down, and that we're dangerously close to that tipping point. I just really feel that. And that's the great concern. Yes, I mean, if we get to 5 or 5.5%, some economists just said we can go higher than that under the current tax plan and the way everything's shaking out. We certainly hope so. But even at that GDP growth, that amount, it may not be enough to get us out of the hole that we continue to create here. I just think Congress has got to get very serious about spending money that we know we don't have. And everybody knows there's rampant fraud, waste, and abuse across the federal government. We have to get serious about changing some of those practices, or we're doing, as I said, a disservice to the country.
Let's go back to Ronald Reagan days when obviously implementing some pretty aggressive tax reform, tax laws. I mean, you were in a different world then. I mean, you had inflation in crazy levels. You had interest rates at crazy levels. I mean, things just weren't – there was no normal then. He implemented some strategic changes, created some massive prosperity, but also ran up the debt bill, the beginning of the debt bill way back when, and at some point had to ratchet back and reduce some of the tax cuts they had made early on. Is there any expectation with the most recent tax cuts that there could be a potential for having to pull back if things get overheated in the years ahead?
Boy, I hope not, because I genuinely believe that when the government taxes us less, it unleashes the free market, and we're beginning to see that, that entrepreneurs and risk takers and job creators can do what it is that they do instinctively, and that is expand and grow and add new jobs and all the rest. Wages are going up. Millions of Americans have already seen increases in their pay, and they've seen bonuses that companies and even large corporations have pushed down to the employees, as we expected would happen. But to roll back the tax cuts, I think, and really fear that would turn it in the opposite direction, and that you would begin to lose a lot of that steam in the engine. So what we have to do is a delicate balance as we go forward. In the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, there were some sunset provisions on the individual tax rates. They were set to expire. The reductions are set to expire in a few years. There's talk in the Congress of going in and trying to make more of that permanent, and so. I'm one of those voices. I think we need to do that because I think it's right, and we'll see what happens. Hopefully inflation can be kept in check. There's concern about it right now, as you know, but we learned a lot during the Reagan years. There were a lot of lessons learned, and hopefully we can avoid some of those same pitfalls.